This video will contain spoilers from the world and story of Subnautica. Please beware.
Now, the world of Subnautica is a truly amazing place, with planet 4546b having so many incredible creatures roaming the lands and the deep depths underwater. But, as many of you know, several thousand years ago, that world was even way crazier than it is now, with colossal beings roaming the caves, roaming the depths, and roaming the entire planet. Now, we've already talked about some of these in my episode on the skeletal remnants in the Lost River, and well, today we have another one on our platter, this time from below zero. In this video, I will describe and discuss what I think about this creature and its impact on the entirety of what we know about kharaa in planet 4546b. Now, of course, as of right now, Subnautica Below Zero is not fully out yet, so it is entirely possible that some of this information may be changed as it nears its release. So don't take anything that I say as a fact set in stone, and rather approach it as a discussion about something that's interesting in a cool video game. Now, with that out of the way, make sure your seats in your Seamoth are warm, get ready to explore some dark caves, and let's go right in. Now, in the frozen wonderland of Sector 0, there is a cave, and if you go down that cave, eventually a rather large open area will show up in front of you. In this area, there's a bunch of Altera equipment facing a solid, large ice wall. You walk right up to it, you peer through, and you lay your eyes upon what is effectively one of the largest leviathans we've ever seen in the entirety of Subnautica, dead or alive, completely, or at least mostly, encased in ice. This is the Frozen Leviathan species. Now, from the outside, this creature is incredibly huge. In fact, it is only when you put the player's body next to it that the true size of it really comes through. It has 4 rather muscular limbs attached to a bulky body with a very long tail that stretches about another body length in the back of it, and a very iconic head with 4 bony protrusions, 2 of which come out as horns near the back of its head, and 2 larger ones which come out, one from each side of its face. A face that is adorned with a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, and 2 large eyes, one on each side, with what could potentially be a place that another eye used to be but simply evolved away right behind them. On top of that, the final interesting point about it are the many bony protrusions coming out of its back, presumably its spine, that run all the way from its neck down to its tail. But appearances aside, the first thing that catches your eye are the large green pustules all over its body. That is kharaa. Now, because of this, we know that it couldn't have been more than 1,000 years since this creature died, simply because that's when kharaa was unleashed onto this planet by the precursors. Now, even though it is covered head to toe in these pustules, seemingly it didn't die from kharaa, or at least we can't tell, as its body position seems to be rather upright. However, of course, it is possible that it simply collapsed, floated down in this position, and then, well, froze in the icy wall. Now, I think there are several interesting conclusions we can draw from this, not only about the species and some other species on the planet, but also about some theories we've had about how the Arctic has survived being infected by kharaa. Now, when I originally proposed my theory and my issues with how the Arctic is still alive, the number one argument that is still used to this day is that there are emperors in the Sector 0, something that has helped the area survive. If it worked the same as it does in the creator of the base game, an emperor would create Enzyme 42 that would basically cure anything that comes in contact with it. However, simply due to this giant leviathan being infected, we now know that that isn't true. So either it is that 1,000 years ago, emperors were not there, and one of them simply made their way over later, which is not impossible, just rather unlikely, or the theory I've had from the beginning, which is that the individual that can now be found in the Arctic is simply one of the emperor babies that Riley hatches at the end of the first game. But let's move back to our frozen friend here. Looking at its hind and front legs, they are surprisingly muscular. I mean, the creature sure has a bulky body, but looking at the composition of its limbs, I would almost think that this is a creature that could have, potentially, lived on the surface. Now the wiki theorizes that simply due to its weight, it most likely wouldn't hunt on the surface, perhaps merely come up there to rest while doing most of its hunting underwater, which could most definitely be the case. Now the second interesting point though that we can draw from this is that theoretically, if a creature like this was able to evolve, that let's just say it lived partially on land and in water, that could potentially mean that back 1000 years ago, and presumably even further than that, the planet of 4546b may have been covered in water much less than it is now. In fact, it is completely possible that there were larger areas not covered in water that would present the opportunity for colossal predators that live on dry land to exist. Now, if we take a theory like this a step further, we can even begin to doubt some of our theories about the original skeletal remains from the Lost River. Perhaps not all of those creatures used to live underwater as we thought they did. And if you're having trouble believing that this thing could have potentially lived on the surface, at least partially, why don't we just look at what seems to be its closest relative in the world right now? Because if you look at the body of the Frozen Leviathan closely, it starts to very strongly resemble one animal which we can find on the surface of Subnautica below zero, that being the Snowstalker. Not only is their body structure, including the proportions and limb sizes, somewhat similar, but the bony protrusions on its back match the ones of the Snowstalker quite closely. Even if that weren't enough, one final piece of potential evidence for this theory, if you look at the markings on the back of the Frozen Leviathan, they actually somewhat resemble the markings on the back of the fur of the Snowstalker. Now of course, this could all just be a coincidence. However, it is my theory that these two might have at least shared an ancestor somewhere down the line, which once again could potentially support the theory that a creature like this could partially live on dry land. Now obviously, all of this raises just as many questions. Is this species even extinct? Are there more humongous creatures to be uncovered underneath the ice? Is there a lot more to know about kharaa than we did up to this point? Well, up until the point that the game fully comes out and we get at least some answers to these questions. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and have at least something new to think about until the eventual release of Below Zero. If you guys liked the video, maybe consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. All those would be very much appreciated. And if there's any fact about the creature that I missed, or a theory of your own that you would like to propose, make sure to leave those down in the comments as well. I would very much like to read them. Now with that, I'm gonna wish you all a beautiful rest of the day, and I'll see you all in whatever next video I make. Bye bye.